Right, let's get going then. Thanks everyone for joining today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about open source's best kept secret, and that is marketing automation with MoreTick, which is an open source marketing automation platform. My name is Ruth Cheesley. I'm project lead for MoreTick. And if you have any questions during the session, if you can pop them in the Q&A, when we get to the end of the session, then we'll run through all of the questions that are in the Q&A. If we run over time, or if there's something you want to know outside of this, I'm also doing a session on the Acquia booth an hour after this session finishes. So if you want to come chat, then I'll be available there as well. Okay, so a bit about me. I am project lead from MoreTick, supported by Acquia. I've been involved in open source for probably about 18 years, using and contributing, and mostly in the Joomla project, but don't hold that against me. So that's kind of where I started my contribution journey in open source. I'm located in Ipswich in the UK, and I work full-time in the open source community, supported by Acquia, which is a great privilege. So let's have a look now about what we're going to cover in this session. So we're going to start off by a bit of an outline about what marketing automation is. What is MoreTick and what does it actually do? We're going to talk about how it works, why MoreTick and Drupal are a great combination, particularly for agencies. We're going to go slightly into getting started with MoreTick, but that's a whole talk in itself, honestly. So we can talk more about that in the chat if people want to know more. And also how you as Drupalists could contribute to MoreTick and help our project to grow and thrive. So let's start with the basics. What is marketing automation? Traditional email marketing tends to be single channel focused. So we're often tracking email and link engagement, but we have no knowledge of what's happening outside of email and outside of that particular channel. We have really limited ability to track and nurture throughout the journey of a contact in the buying circle because we just don't know what's happening outside of the email channel. And while we might have some simplistic personalization features like hello, first name, I'm sure we've all received that, there isn't much more than that often. And also any automation features they have are pretty simple. And traditional email marketing can often land in the spam box because it's often one message sent out to everyone. And it feels like you're being sold something which may not be relevant to you because you may be at a different part of your buying journey, or you may be interested in something completely different to what they're telling you about in their email news shots. It doesn't consider the contact's position in their journey with the brand. So you may be a really long-standing customer, but you're getting the same communications as someone who's completely new to the brand, for example. And often, because of the fact that there's no personalization, it doesn't take that into account. It's not necessarily as interesting to the person, and sometimes it's just completely inappropriate. And that leads to them marking it as spam, which can affect your email deliverability and the domain health. So marketing automation is not a complete get out of jail free card. We do require the software, and that's where MoreTick can help with automating some parts of your marketing. But you also need to have a strategy. So you can't automate your way out of a bad strategy, and that part is the bit that you have to bring. But MoreTick brings the ability to nurture prospects with hopefully highly personalized and relevant information that helps move them into becoming a customer from someone who maybe hasn't heard of your brand before, or who has, but they're not actually, they weren't buying at the point when they first came across your brand. A good marketing automation strategy puts the customer at the heart of everything and is really focused on developing that trusted relationship. It's focused on reducing points of friction along that customer journey, anticipating them, knowing what would be useful to provide to the customer in order to address those points, providing it through the right channel, and then making sure that the customer understands where their next step is. And it doesn't always end when the sale is made. So sometimes people think, oh, I've made the sale and that's it. But you can automate all kinds of things after the sale process. Follow-up, setting expectations of what will happen after the deal is closed, for example. Customer satisfaction surveys, sending things like a birthday greeting, or you've been a customer for X number of years automated process. So there's lots of different ways where you can bring in automation into your strategy. And we'll talk about a few of those in this session. So that's all well and good, but what's MoreTick? So I've already mentioned it's an open source marketing automation platform. It's distributed under the GPL version 3, and it uses a very similar stack to Drupal. At the moment, we're on Symfony 4, and we're in the process of migrating up to Symfony 5 with our next major release. We have full composer support, which enables you to manage MoreTick in the same way that you manage your Drupal installations if you use Composer. We're supported by a young but growing community. So our community was really sort of started getting off the ground and governing itself back in 2019. So we're still in the very early days of creating this community. And we really welcome new contributors. We would love to have people coming over from the Drupal community to help us grow this community and this project. We've already had quite a few come over, which has been really wonderful to see. So that's where we're at the moment. But I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse into where we're going in the future. So the vision for MoreTick that I have and that we're moving towards as a project is to be the ultimate fully featured and scalable marketing automation layer, which can either stand alone or it can be dropped into an existing tech stack, enabling organizations to deliver an integrated, personalized digital experience, which is what we've been talking about just earlier. And we want that experience to not only delight the customers in the way they receive that automation and personalization, but also to delight the marketers who are using the tool. A lot of pain we see in the industry at the moment is the tools are clunky, old-fashioned, and really difficult for people to learn and use. So we want MoreTick to really start to challenge that, and already it does. So let's have a dive into what it actually does. So it solves some fundamental issues that marketers have. When we talk to marketers, often they're using 10, 15, 20 tools to actually manage the information about their customers. Whereas with MoreTick, everything is in one place. Everything about the customer is in one centralized location. Because of that, it means you can truly personalize not only your transactional information, but also your marketing communications. And you can do that through multiple channels, which MoreTick supports. This means when we interact with our customers, we can do so consistently across lots of different channels. So on the website, on the emails, it might be pushing to a Drupal application that's managing screens. It might be anything, really. The information about the person is on their profile, therefore you can use that to personalize the experience anywhere. So the way this works is it starts by capturing and enhancing information about the customer. And it starts when they're a visitor. So it starts when they first come to our website, our application, and we track what happens across that application. Anywhere you see the Drupal icon, that means that this would be happening or could be happening on your website or your application. We also track interactions with emails, for example, so opening them, clicking on them, replying to them even. We can track interactions with SMSs, so we can send them a message. If they reply with a certain message, we can take action on that as well. We can capture and enhance the user profile by the use of data capture forms, where we can either ask for the basic set of information or we can use progressive profiling. So if we already know some information, it's really frustrating, I find, as a user to then have to repeat that information over and over and over again. So with progressive profiling, we can take them through to a form and only ask for the information that they haven't yet provided us. So it gives a much nicer user experience if we're able to do that. We can use call to action prompts. So in this case, signing up for a newsletter, I'm sure we all hate them. They can be bars. They don't have to be in your face full screen splash pop-ups. They can be like nice little discrete things, but you can also use them to provide information. Like, don't forget you've got an active coupon code when you're on the checkout page to remind people to use a coupon code that they have, for example. And also, if we have third-party tools like a customer relationship management tool, an electronic point of sale or something like that, that can also be integrated into MoreTick. Or you can use a third-party tool like a CDP and integrate that with MoreTick. So we can pull in all the information we know about what products they have purchased or what they have been interacting with. And this means that we can create fully configurable campaign workflows across all of the channels that we've been talking about. So we can configure these across email, SMS, browsers, push notifications, web-based pop-ups, bars, modals, but also we have an open REST API in MoreTick. And that means you can also integrate with custom integrations. So say you have some funky stuff going on your website. I don't know, maybe you're you have an estate agency and you've got a bunch of properties on there. You could write an integration to pull in relevant properties based on the customer profile information, for example. The open source element of that is one of the great benefits. You can do what you like, really, and the REST API enables you to do that. So we'll jump in a little bit to how this actually all works under the hood. MoreTick builds a profile, as I mentioned, for visitors and known contacts. The way that works is there's a JavaScript script that is embedded either through the Drupal plugin, or you can put it directly on the page, or you can integrate with Google Tag Manager or any other tag manager. It does integrate with the various cookie tools that you have available in the Drupal world and the external world. You may need to do a little bit of tinkering to make sure that it only fires when the cookie has been accepted. And as soon as someone lands on the resources, whether it's a website, application, landing page, it starts to build a profile of that activity across all of the places where you have the tracking code. We can then use that information to synchronize the profile with any other tools in our stack as soon as we identify that contact. So as soon as they fill in a form to get a coupon code to get 10% off their favorite handbags or whatever it is that they're buying, that identifies the person. We know all of the history of what they've been doing before we've identified them. And then if that person exists in your database already, you can associate those two accounts. So here's what it looks like when you actually dive into MoreTick. This is my profile from moretick.org. And you can see there's an interaction graph there. So this is telling engagements like page hits, opening of emails, anything like that. Something weird happened in May. That was because we had a big event, so I was accessing lots of resources on the website. But you would be able to see here the history of the contact and what they've done with your brand. The avatar is pulled in through Gravatar. We can also see the number of points. Underneath the points, it tells us what stage they're at. This is completely customizable to your own business requirements. For me, it says I'm a community contributor. You would expect that as project lead. It might be that they're just interested. It could be that they are whatever stages you want to set up. And then at the bottom, you'll see that there's an activity log. And this is basically where you can view through and filter all of the activity that person has done on your website, in emails, in SMS, the whole history of the interaction with you. So on the next page, we also have a detailed look into that. It shows us across all channels. It also tells us useful things like when they've joined segments. It tells us if they have been had campaigns that have been changed. We can also see scheduled communication. So with MoreTick, you can schedule things to happen in the future. So you'll see here that in January, I'm scheduled to get an email. And this is a re-verification to confirm that we do still have permission to contact that person. So that will automatically go out on that date. But when I'm viewing the contact, I can actually see that and reschedule it if I need to. And I talked about segmentation. So segmenting contacts is chunking them down by something that they all have in common. It's a way of organizing your lists, basically. In MoreTick, there's a very simple query builder with and/or options. It can use fields, it can use segment memberships, it can use stages, points, and loads more to chunk up your contacts into lists of groups of people who have the same thing in interest in common. We build segments using cron jobs. So everything in MoreTick is triggered and powered by cron jobs. And there's one job for each thing that has to happen in MoreTick. This shows you building a segment for people in Belgium who are interested in receiving community news. And this is because we're just about to start up a meetup group in Belgium, in Ghent. So we wanted to be able to communicate with everyone who's given us permission to contact them about community news, who's located, as best we know, in Belgium. And so this segment is saying if they're in Belgium, country, and they're in the community news segment, which means they're interested in receiving that information, Exclude unsubscribe from all lists. So that's just to catch anyone who might have unsubscribed, but it hasn't triggered the unsubscribe removal job yet. So it's just a belt and braces approach to make sure we don't accidentally contact them before they're removed. And that we have the GDPR consent tag. And again, that's a belt and braces approach because we remove the consent tag when their consent has expired, and it's re-added when they reconsent. So we're just making absolutely sure we have permission to contact them. And you can build these segments to meet your own requirements. They can get quite complicated using various and or rules. As well as that intuitive segment builder, we have a really nice journey builder or campaign builder, which you may have heard referred to in the past. This allows you to click to select the different things that you want to happen and take action on, drag to move them around the canvas to make them easier to see, and provides a really clean user interface. It enables building a campaign journey using 3 blocks: decisions, actions, and conditions, which I'm going to come on to a little bit and explain what each of those 3 are. And we also have affirmative and negative paths, which lets you really build out a full campaign workflow. What that means is affirmative means this thing did happen, and negative means this thing didn't happen. So I'll show you some examples of that of a campaign in a second. Okay, here we go. So this is a short video which explains building, sorry, it's not a video even, it's explaining the different options. So a decision is what happens when a contact takes action or they don't take action. So examples of this might be they used a specific device or a type of operating system. It might be that they downloaded an asset or that they submitted a form, a specific form, visited a specific page, which might be on your website, or it might be a landing page in MoreTick, whether they've opened, clicked, or replied to an email. So those are the options you have in the decision block. Action is probably the most common one that you use within MoreTick. Action is when something actually is executed by MoreTick, and it's one of the fundamental building blocks. It's when you get stuff done. There are loads of these, so I can't mention them all, but some of them are there on the screen. So sending emails, sending SMSs, adjusting the score of a contact or a company, adding do not contact if they say they want you to remove them, taking them out of a campaign, adding them into campaigns, firing off a webhook, updating the contact or company. So there's loads of different things you can do there. And condition is also a really powerful one. So this can be based on a profile field, or it can be based on something that's been submitted in a form. We can use the conditions to do things like, are they in or not in a particular campaign or segment? Have they used a specific device or OS? A value on a contact profile, whether there is something there or not, or whether it contains something or it equals something. The owner of a contact, so that would be like the account manager in effect. Contact tags, form values, whether they have active notifications, which they haven't engaged with yet, and whether they have a valid email address. So those are all the kind of things that we can use when we're building a campaign in MoreTick. And here's the little video. This is not building a full campaign, so it's building a partial campaign, but it'll give you an insight into how this all works. So to start with, we choose a form, which is the entry point into this campaign. And then we say, send an email immediately, which is a welcome email. In this case, it's a property inquiry form. So we're saying, hey, thanks for inquiring. Here's a link to book a call with one of our team. So we're saying here, if they open the email, yes. And then we're saying, add points. So this is our way of saying whether they're engaged with the process or not. And here we're saying if they land on a particular page. This is a conversion page for when someone books a call with us. So we know they're only going to land on that if they've booked a call. So if they have booked a call, we move them into the warm lead stage. We know that they're interested in what we're offering and they've booked a call with us. If they haven't opened that email, we can send a follow-up email within 3 days just to remind them to book a call with us. And what we can do is we can also say, only please send this email between the hours of, say, 9 a.m. and 8 p.m., Monday to Friday. I don't want to be harassing them on the weekend. So that's a really neat feature. And you can see here it says wait 3 days. That's the delay that we're doing. to make sure that we're not sending it right away. So that is almost, I think that's 1.5 times sped up. So you can see how quickly you can build out campaigns using this builder once you've got all the resources like the emails you want to send set up. But we don't only have a really funky, beautiful campaign builder. We now, since MoreTick 4, have a really beautiful landing page and email builder. It's based on the open source framework Grapesjs. It creates MJML-based fully responsive email themes. MJML is amazing. It's a very, very simple markup, which then converts into all of the bloated code that you need for emails to look beautiful in all the different clients. Really, really great tool. So you haven't got to worry about that yourself, basically. It does it all for you. It has a really lovely drag and drop, fully configurable interface. And it's fully customizable, which is really awesome. So if you are doing something funky off in your website, you can create your own components to use in Grapesjs and your own blocks. You could style Grapesjs to meet your own requirements. So it's a really, really great project to have incorporated into MoreTick. And this came in with our 4.0 release as a standard available feature. So here's a quick video where I walk through one of our sample themes, which is called Brienne's, and just customized a couple of parts of the email template. You can see how easy it is to make changes and drag and drop things. So here I wanted to change the image. So I just click to upload a new image, select the image, ask it to not repeat and take up the full space. And then I want to edit the content. So I just double click and I can use the inline editor to make changes to my email, change the bit below. Maybe I want to update the button, change the text here. And then I want to check that it works okay on responsive. So at the top, we've got the option for a tablet view and a mobile view. So we can just double check that the formatting and the layout looks okay on those. And this allows you to view code mode. So you've got MGML code on the left and HTML, i.e. all the bloat that you need to satisfy the outlooks of the world, on the right-hand side. So the left is what the MGML is, the right is the rendered content. It's a super tool. You can also build landing pages with it, and you can just drag and drop all of the different elements in that you need to build up your templates. So what we're going to do is walk through a worked example of this. And this is just a fictional example of something that I dreamt up, of how an organization might use MoreTick. So we're going to use the example of an estate agent or a real estate agent, if you're in the US, and have a think about how they might actually use MoreTick in their business. So here's an example of the full-size campaign of what I was talking about earlier. It allows you to create that workflow that we had before about sending the welcome email. And if they don't respond, then we send a follow-up. What we're also doing here, though, is adding a tag based on the location, so the county that they're based in. So if it's Suffolk on the form, then we add the Suffolk tag and we assign it to the Suffolk office. If it was Norfolk, we assign it to the Norfolk office. We also ask in a checkbox if they have a property to sell, because this is a property inquiry form where they're buying something. But if you're buying a house, you may have one to sell, and we might be able to help you sell it. So we're also saying if they have a property to sell and they check that box, we flag it up to the sales team. So we shoot them an email and say, hey, there's a new lead to follow up, and here's the details. We push some content to the website. So we change a whole section of the website. Instead of giving generic information, we're now sending information about buying and selling with us and why you should buy and sell with us and why that's a great idea. We're also looking at adding a seller tag, and we're looking at, on the other side, if they haven't got a property to sell, then we would push information just about buying with us. So we're going to take away anything about selling and just have information about buying with us and add the buyer's tag. So when we were talking earlier, we've got our decisions here, the two green highlighted ones, the decisions. We've got actions highlighted in blue. So you can see that's the majority of the things that are happening in this campaign, things that are actually being done within MoreTick. And then over here, we've got the conditions. So this is based on the fields that are being used within the form that they submitted. and we're taking action based on the information that was submitted in the form. So with this situation in mind, let's look at what might happen as we bring people through the marketing funnel. So when we're at the top of the funnel, this is where they're new to the company. They don't really know anything about us and they're just inquiring. They're interested to find out more. Maybe they've seen a property on a third-party site and they want to get more information. So at this early stage, what we're trying to do with MoreTick is understand what they're looking for. We might segment them by location. We might segment them by requirements. Do they need a garden? Do they need a garage? Are they looking for a detached or a semi-detached? And maybe even also by budget to make sure that we are dealing with them appropriately based on what they're looking to spend. As they move down, the focus there is on getting viewings. It's on filling in inquiry forms, identifying the customer, using points and stages maybe to help us understand whereabouts they are in their journey. The goal here is to capture information and arrange the viewing. So we might create property-specific landing pages, maybe even landing pages that try to identify whether they are buying or selling, what their budget is, what their requirements are. Those landing pages might be built in Drupal with embedded MoreTick forms. That can be embedded with the JavaScript, with HTML, or through plugins. You can also use Drupal forms and just synchronize them to MoreTick if you prefer. So there are modules for this in the Drupal projects. We might be creating advertising campaign specific landing pages. So if you're doing a campaign and you want to actually highlight a particular property, we could be creating a landing page just for that. And also tracking the referral source is really important, particularly for your marketers who are doing AdWords or social media advertising to try and bring in interest, so they can track return on AdWords spend or return on social spend. We track interactions, what are they actually interested in on the page, and we track engagement at this stage. Our segmentation and our scoring is based on the behavior and activity that they're doing on the website. And we use all of this information to show relevant and appropriate call to actions, to send them relevant properties when we communicate with them, perhaps by email, and also to make sure that we're understanding what they're looking for. So an example of how we might do this is surfacing properties in their emails that match the requirements. We can also use dynamic content on the website to change out areas of the website based on what we know about them. For example, we can say if they're in this segment, show this content. If they're not in this segment, show this content. We can integrate with existing tools to pull in filtered information. So if you are doing some funky thing with some other tool, with the REST API, you can actually pull that information in and push that out into the emails using Twig templates, for example. So here's an example of a mocked up landing page. And the idea of this landing page is that we're trying to identify the person and to understand their intent. And this could be built in Drupal, it could be built in MoreTick, whatever you prefer. We can also use forms as an opportunity to show the customer that we understand them. So this was a form from a local agency to me, and they now provide the option for a virtual or a live viewing option. So they're showing that they understand that not everyone is going to want to physically come around the house and look at it in these current times. So you can say whether you would prefer an in-person or a virtual viewing opportunity. There's also an opportunity to ask questions. Whenever you fill in these forms, usually you have some questions about the property. And it's another opportunity to understand their intent. So we have a box there for them to check to say, I have a property to sell. So that checkbox would be what would escalate off the I have a property to sell workflow in MoreTick. And importantly, in today's age, is explicitly gaining consent for this purpose to contact them by email and by phone. I can't express how important this is in terms of generating trust, that you've explicitly said that is what you're going to do with their contact information. So as we move through the funnel, they're interested, they've sent in an inquiry form. The next step is qualification, and this goes two ways. So it's about you qualifying them to make sure that they are actually ready to buy, they have the money or could access the money to buy the properties and they're not just wasting your time, but also understanding when they're likely to proceed. Building trust and brand trust is really important in this stage. Our goal here is to prioritize the customer by their likelihood to complete and to understand when they might be completing. I mentioned progressive profiling. That's really important in this stage. We can helpfully gather more information on the customer when they come to fill in another form. If they've expressed an interest in a property, we can send them to another form to give us information that they haven't already provided us. We can use points to prioritize them based on their readiness to convert. We probably know the behaviors of someone who is likely to be buying soon versus those who are just kicking the tires. Maybe we could assign high worth customers to a specific team or individual automatically based on their budget that they've got available or the properties that they're looking at. So you may give them a specialist concierge service if they're a high worth customer. And it's so important here to focus on developing the trust and nurturing the confidence in the brand. And we can do that really well through MoreTick. Ultimately, we want the customer to be at the point where they're saying, well, why would I go elsewhere? So we're trying to address all the reasons why they might not come with us. So it may be reputation, it may be that we don't offer services that others are. We are trying to address those friction points at this point in the process through the content that we're able to deliver them through MoreTick. So then when we get down towards the sale point, this is where we start to, pop the champagne and celebrate that we've closed the deal or whatever. And in this case, we want to make sure that in closing that deal, we're really delighting the customer. This is where it really matters. Customer service really matters at the point where they've signed on the line. It's an opportunity potentially to automate the process of cross-selling other services that they're likely to need at this point in their customer journey. So they may need to apply for a mortgage application, life insurance, they may need to update their will, they might need removal services if they're having to move. You can be helpful and ask them these things, provide them the information that they ask for as part of this hooray, you've bought a house process. We can set expectations post-close, so we can tell them what the process is next, what they need to know about when they're coming to pick up their keys. The day before, we could send them a reminder checklist. We could even send that to them as an SMS with a link to our landing page or website to remind them of the things that they need to bring with them when they come to complete the deal and pick up the keys. I loved receiving this one from when I bought my house, which is a list of useful resources in the local area. When are the bins going to be collected? Who do I contact to set up the council tax? How do I know what time the milkman arrives? Whatever it is. How do I change my address at all the places that I have to change my address? This shows that you care about the customer. It shows that you understand it's a stressful process and you're trying to streamline it. And it can all be automated through MoreTick. And then finally, thanking the customer for trusting you. You could even tie it in, if you were a real estate agent, with a gift on move-in day. We had a big box of things with like loo roll, mugs, paper plates and knives and forks. The kind of stuff that you really need, but they're in some box at the back of the house and you can't find them when you first move in. And a bottle of wine doesn't go astray either. And also customer satisfaction surveys. So you can automate that process, say after a few weeks. How did it go? Was everything okay? Was there anything we could do better? And if it's appropriate, you can even use that process to ask them to complete a review and thank them if they do complete a review. Great. So that's kind of an idea of how I see MoreTick working in one particular sector. Obviously, the sectors you work in might be different, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an insight into the power of MoreTick and how this can really impact a business, and it can allow you to automate a lot of your marketing processes. So now I want to talk about why I think MoreTick is a good fit with Drupal. And I asked some of our Drupalists in our community to give me some thoughts on this as well. So this is sort of my ideas along with their ideas. I think first and foremost, one of the most important things is that it's under the same license as Drupal. So you haven't got to worry about that side of things. You can literally just provide the two alongside each other. You've already probably gone through the process of explaining GPL to clients when you're using MoreTick. So you don't have to worry about doing that again. The second thing is that if you have developers in-house, they're probably very familiar with Symfony. MoreTick is already based on Symfony, so the crossover there means they can probably adapt quite easily to working with Symfony as a platform in MoreTick. We probably have our own little quirks of how we do things, but generally speaking, the platform itself is the same across both. I think freedom is such an important one, and this was a really big one when I asked people in the community. Freedom to own your own data, which does not happen if you have HubSpot, MailChimp, any of those other things. You can export the data, but you don't actually own it. It can be a bit of a nightmare trying to get that from one system to another. You also have freedom to extend MoreTick as much as you like because it's open source. You can do whatever you like with it. And also you can grow with MoreTick. Sure, you're going to have to upscale your hosting infrastructure. You're going to have to learn how to optimize things if you want to scale to big numbers, like in the 5-10 million number of contact numbers. But it is possible. And we're doing a lot of work at the moment on making it even more scalable to go beyond that. So effectively, there isn't any upper limit on the number of contacts you can have in your MoreTick instance. I feel like integration is a really important one as well. So yes, we integrate with Drupal, and there are modules that you can use for the different aspects of what MoreTick does. But we also integrate with lots of other third-party tools, and you can integrate using the REST API with basically anything you want to. For me, that's such an important thing. All of your tech stack needs to talk to each other if we're going to be able to do this kind of holistic profile and communication of the customer. The next one is growth. So for agencies, if you're offering Drupal services, it's not going to be long before people start expecting to have embedded personalization within their web properties, within their applications. Digital experience is a massively growing sector at the moment. It's a huge industry, and there are not many people who are providing true digital experiences fully with open source. So it's a great opportunity to jump on board there and get things up and running. And finally, we have a really awesome community. It is small, but we are growing around the world of open source contributors. And I feel like that's a great parallel with Drupal. You know, we have a similar kind of atmosphere, welcoming community. And there will be people nearby you who are also interested in MoreTick. Okay, so getting started with MoreTick. This, as I said at the beginning, is like a whole talk in itself. So there's no way I can do it justice in the 15 odd minutes we have left. If you want to self-host with MoreTick, pretty much similar stack to what you need for self-hosting Drupal. We do recommend Linux. Windows is possible. It's not really something we do much of. Most people host with Linux. You can use Apache or Nginx, whichever you prefer. You can use MySQL or MariaDB. You can use PHP. The minimum versions and everything are available on moretick.org/download/requirements, which you can get to through the menu. So you can see what requirements there are for that. If you don't want to go down the self-hosting route, either as an individual business or as an organization, I strongly recommend getting in touch with our MoreTick community partners. So these amazing folks contribute financially and to support MoreTick, but they also have to be active consistently in the community across all of our channels. So these organizations either provide hosted software as a service MoreTick, or they will support your MoreTick running on your infrastructure. So these are the folks I would look at contacting if you're interested in self-hosting. Most of them have partners programs, so you can offer their services to your customers, and you don't have to worry about the hosting. They take care of all of that for you. I think we're slowing down a bit here. Here we go. So the first thing you have to do is download MoreTick. So you can either download it by moretick.org/download, or you can get it through Composer on Packages, moretick/core, or you can clone from github.com/moretick/moretick, or you can grab it from Docker. Once you've grabbed it locally, you need to install it either through the user interface or through the command line or using Composer. We also have ddev support natively. So if you're familiar with ddev, you can also use that to install MoreTick locally. And we have a work in progress PR to set up Gitpod support, which will allow you to spin up instances on Gitpod's cloud. Once we've installed, we then have to run through the configuration, choose what email transport we want to use. So that might be default using your email server, but it could also be Amazon SES or MailJet or SparkPost or SendGrid or any of the providers that we support, or a custom SMTP integration. And as I mentioned earlier, setting up the cron jobs, which makes everything happen in MoreTick. It's a bit like the engine that keeps things running. And then we integrate. So we integrate with our Drupal website, we install the module and set that up and connect it up, install any other modules that you might need, configure any integrations like with content, customer relationship management tools and the like, and then we're ready to go. So what I'm going to do is show you a quick video which I showed in my keynote at the last MoreTick conference, World Conference. And this is installing and setting up MoreTick using the recommended project and composer. So it's just a really short video, even got some funky music to go along with it. And you'll see how quick it is to get set up with this and to install at the user interface and get up and running with MoreTick. If you're familiar with Drupal and Composer, it might ring a few bells because this was created by Nick Veenhoff based on how this works in Drupal. You may not hear the audio. I'm not sure if it will come through. So if not, you can imagine dancing along to some funky music. So we grab the command from the GitHub repository, which is MoreTick/recommended project. And this will install all of the dependencies that we require. And the nice part about the recommended project is it moves all of the files out of the default project root and into other folders. So this is best practice, moving them out of the web root and into somewhere else. This is probably familiar to you if you use Drupal. This is quite new to us in MoreTick. So it allows you to manage your MoreTick instance, have custom plugins and so forth. So this is where we're setting database credentials, our admin login, our email transport, and then logging into MoreTick. This is the MoreTick dashboard, and we're just going to have a quick look and check to make sure all the paths have been set correctly in the global configuration. Now, obviously, this is sped up quite a bit, but from start to finish, that would usually take 5 to 10 minutes. So it's very, very quick, and particularly using DDev locally, it can be less than that because we have an automated installation process that does all the magic for you. So finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Drupalists can get involved in contributing to MoreTick. There are loads of opportunities to get involved because we have very small community, nowhere near the scale of Drupal yet. Since 2019, we've formed these 5 teams: community, education, legal and finance, marketing and product. All teams meet asynchronously on Slack fortnightly, thanks to the Drupal diversity and inclusion team for this idea. It's a great idea and it works really well for us. If you're not on Slack, you can join by getting an invite at moretick.org/Slack. Slack is where all of our kind of collaboration happens in terms of real-time chat. All the team channels are prefixed with T- and then the team name. We also are starting up Tiger teams, which sounds very exciting, and it is. It's a small group of people, 3 to 6 people, who are really tightly focused on a specific area. So that might be email deliverability, accessibility. It could be a particular part of MoreTick, like campaigns or forms. And they become the subject matter experts, and they're the people who will ultimately sign off on any improvements, features, or bug fixes, or they will be the people who are responsible for thinking about how we can improve those areas. And they're all prefixed with TT- for Tiger Team on Slack. And we have working groups. So working groups are formed for a specific focus. So something like organizing a conference, managing the website, writing the newsletter, and they're all prefixed with WG- and then the name of the working group. We also have initiatives, which are projects, a bit like the initiatives you have in the Drupal community, and they start with I-. I didn't add them to this list, but if you're interested in our strategic initiatives, that's how you find those. So do hop in and join us on Slack. There is a #Drupal channel there, so you'll probably find some of your friends from the Drupal community there already. We also have a Jira board for any of the kind of bigger picture planning that the teams are doing. You can get to that at mortic.atlassian.net/Jira. And I had a poke about on there yesterday. And this is an issue that's been open for quite some time, which is writing a knowledge-based article about how to install and configure the Drupal module, and generally how to use MoreTick with Drupal. So this is definitely something that some of you folks could help us with if you're using MoreTick or if you're interested in MoreTick. There's a link to a Google Doc there. You just click on the link. It will give you the full editorial brief, links to relevant information. You just write the content in the Google Doc and share it with us and say this is done, and it will be reviewed. So you can view these by default as a member of the public. If you want to interact, you can sign up, but just ping us in Slack if you have any problems. Issue triage is another thing that would be really great to have people helping us with. Simple things like thanking people for raising issues, triaging it to see if it is an issue, if you can reproduce it with the current version of MoreTick, if they've given enough information to reproduce the bug, which often they don't. That would be a really great way for people to help. Issues without pull requests associated probably need a fix. So if you're a developer and you're interested in helping us with those, by all means, pick something up and have a look and see if you can fix it. We do have a bounty system in MoreTick. So if you see something with a label of bounty, it means there's some funds available to fix that issue. So check in the details for information about the issue. And then once that is resolved, you'll be able to claim those funds. Testing pull requests is a massive thing in the community. I think you probably have the same with Drupal. We have a very simple setup for enabling you to test PRs locally. We assume that you're using DDEV and Docker Desktop, which you need for DDEV, and the GitHub command line interface. Really, really helpful tools, speed things up massively. So this is the step, basically. You create a directory that you want to work in. You do GitHub gh repo clone MoreTick/MoreTick, which will pull down the repository, set up the remotes, change directory into that directory, type DDEV start. That will spin up a DDEV instance. If it's a bug, we need to reproduce it before we apply the PR. And then we do GitHub PR checkout, and then the number of the GitHub PR you're checking out. That will check out the PR, pull down the branch, do all of the stuff, clear your cache, and you're ready to test. So it's a very, very easy process to actually test PRs in MoreTick. And then we ask that you leave your findings in the review on the PR, and that enables our team to make sure that it has been tested enough times and reviewed as well. So if none of those things are interesting to you, building the community is something that I feel the Drupal community could help us immensely with. From a practical perspective, we're organising our first ever in-person conference in Hasselt in Belgium on the 8th and 9th of November. And we would love to have volunteers to help us with every aspect of that, from marketing, comms, to the practical on the day stuff, to everything, basically. We really need volunteers for that. Helping out on the forums and Slack as you start to get to know a little bit more about MoreTick. Having a look on the forums and answering some of the common questions is a really great way of giving back to the community. And just being on Slack and participating in team meetings, giving your thoughts on what we're talking about in team meetings would really be a great way to help us build our community. A thing I think Drupal does really well is promoting Drupal, and we want to get better at promoting MoreTick. We want more people to know about MoreTick and understand how it can help drive their business forwards. So any ideas you have, that ways you can help the marketing team with improving what we're doing in this area would be amazing. And finally, if none of that applies, we have a Drupal-based website. We don't have many people supporting it. It really needs a site redesign quite badly. Probably needs some infrastructure stuff improving. We would definitely appreciate some help from Drupalists in maintaining and managing our website. Okay, so I think I'm nearly at time, so I'm just going to close with a big plug for the first ever MoreTick Europe conference. If you're interested in MoreTick, it's a great way to learn more. It's focused entirely on the user, so it's going to be really actionable insights that you can take away of how to use MoreTick effectively. Come and learn, come and contribute, come and have a great time, meet up with other human beings. You can find more about it at mortycon.mortick.org, and there's also sponsorship opportunities. So if your business is involved with MoreTick, it's a great way of promoting your business in the community. I mentioned that I'm doing an Acquia follow-up chat on the booth in about an hour's time. So it's at 3:50, so 2:50 now, 3:50 in an hour's time. Come and bring your questions if we don't have time to get to them today. And also, don't miss out on the contribution sessions this week at the event. I went along to a first-time contribution workshop in Amsterdam and had a great time, found ways that I could bring my skills to the Drupal community and help contribute with various teams. So I really encourage you to go along to those sessions and, yeah, get involved. So that's me done. Let's have a look at the Q&A and see if there's any other questions to answer. What about targeted Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads instead of mails? Are there integrations for that? So that's from Sam. Right. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at pronouncing surnames. At the moment, there aren't. So some of the providers that I mentioned, some of the software as a service providers, they will have integration. So I know that Acquia's Campaign Studio has an integration for Facebook custom audiences, where it can push from MoreTick into custom audiences. It doesn't allow you to build the ads themselves in MoreTick. We don't have that as a feature. I think that could be a really interesting feature. It could be quite challenging to build. So yeah, integrations wise, I think it would be, yeah, we'd need to look into that. But on the community forums, we also have a third-party integration section. So if there's something specifically you're interested in, you can post there and ask if anyone has done it. And we also have an ideas and feature requests. So I think that you will probably find some ad tech related feature requests on there. So you could hop on there and add your vote to them, maybe add a bit about your use case, like how you would foresee using it with MoreTick, because that is how we look at what features we want to bring into MoreTick in the future. See, are there any other questions? Anyone else have any questions that you would like answered? Feel free to pop them in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, I think that's us then. Thank you everyone for coming. Hope you've had a great DrupalCon so far and have a great few days. And I will catch up with you at some point in the chat or on the Acquia booth in an hour or so. Okay, take care, bye.